In 2020, because of COVID-19, traveling is out, but there's no reason you can't meet old and make new friends at an Agile conference. The Scrum Master Toolbox podcast teamed up with Tom Henriksen to organize the 4th year of the Agile Online Summit, and you can attend for free. There will be networking events, lots of talks on important topics, and 8 amazing keynotes from Mary Poppendick to Alan Holub, Jeff Patton, who's the creator of user story mapping, Neil Killick, who's a no estimates pioneer, Jeff Watts, author of Scrum Mastery, a great book for Scrum Masters, Jeff Gotthelf, Bob Galen, and our very own Marcus Hammarberg, who's the author of the Bungsu Story, a great Agile transformation story. You can get your free tickets at bit.ly/SMAOS 2020. All lowercase, all one word. Once again, bit.ly/SMAOS 2020. All lowercase, all one word, and the link is also on the show notes. You can get your free ticket or opt for the full digital access that lets you keep all the conference videos forever. And for example, organize Agile learning sessions at work by watching those videos. You can get the full digital access at bit.ly/SMAOS 2020. But don't forget, there will be lots of live networking events, so I'll see you at the conference floor. Hello everybody, welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, and this week joining us from the Netherlands is Pieter Verbaarschott. Did I pronounce your last name correctly there, Pieter?
Yes, excellent, thanks.
So Pieter, welcome to the show. Pieter is a hands-on generalist with a background in software development, a passion for helping teams work better together, an Agile aficionado since his first endeavors in extreme programming, and it's excellent to have another extreme programmer in the show. And he happened to be among Agile Manifesto authors when the discussion for the Agile Manifesto, of course, was hot, and he refuses to work traditional way. So, Pieter, that was a short intro to you. So take a minute, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Yes, thanks Vasco for the introduction. And I think as many Scrum Masters, I come from a software development background. I started software development at a young age out of interest for what it could do to make my life easier. So not so much from the bits and the bytes, but more like what recurring boring tasks it could automate for me. And I like software development since a young age, so I kept doing that, and later on I found work in software development and various IT roles. My studies were actually in psychology. I took a different path there, and that's very interesting because throughout my journey as a software developer I came into contact with the beginnings of the Agile ideas, extreme programming, the Agile Manifesto. They were forming and being made more known, at least in the Netherlands, in the early 2000s, while I was a software developer. Many years later, like a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to switch careers, let's say, and become a full-time Scrum Master and Agile coach. And that means that after a long time, I found the opportunity to, let my inner Scrum Master out.
That's a nice way to put it. Absolutely. Many of the people that have been on the show have said that it's kind of a calling, right? It's something that once you find it, you go like, oh, yeah, that kind of fits my personality.
Mm-hmm, for sure. One of the things that gave me a strong indication that the whole Agile and extreme programming, more specifically at the time, was worthwhile was that I had some direct experience doing that as a software developer. So I had some projects which we did in extreme programming, and they were few projects that were actually on time, on budget, and with a happy customer.
And a happy team too.
Yeah, exactly. For me as a software developer and my colleagues, this was a very pleasant and sort of enlightening experience that it can be done in a very, very different way, but it actually works really well.
So, but Pieter, we know, of course, that not all agile experiences, and especially not all of our own experiences as Scrum Masters, go as well as we intend them to go, right? And today's Monday, we look at a story of failure. And we do that because, of course, we want to learn from that. We want to analyze what happened, take our learnings and improve. So share that story with us, Pieter, a story of a moment where you as a Scrum Master, you did your best, but at that time, that just wasn't good enough.
Well, there's a somewhat recent story, let's say, from the past year where I actually had a situation which is quite clearly also part of the Scrum certification exams, right? So this is really a textbook situation that I went through. And that's the question, for instance, what do you do when a certain team member doesn't collaborate well with the others and causes problems and friction all the time? And I've had a team with such a situation, and I recognized it much too late. I was quite a bit distant from the team at the time, and I've heard rumors and things, but I didn't recognize. So I couldn't help the team to make a sense of the situation, and eventually the team took its own steps, of course, without my help. But for me as a Scrum Master, this was a textbook situation where I thought, in hindsight, that I should have handled it much better than I did.
So as you look at that situation, and again, in hindsight, as you said, what were the signs that you were not paying attention to? What were the things that if you had an opportunity to go back, you would have reacted to?
Well, some things went okay at the time, right? So I've had some one-on-ones with this particular team member. We had some feedback. I realized that the other people in the team had some struggles collaborating with this person. So all the signals were known to me and should have led to maybe further action or closer observation from my side. But that's the part where I didn't react on time. So zooming in closer, embracing the conflict situation, making that more obvious to the team instead of sort of circling around it. Me as a person, I'm quite a conflict avoiding by nature, so it was quite difficult for me to really approach that head on, let's say.
That's something that, again, we've heard that also before. Like people tend to step back when there's an opportunity for conflict, and instead of confronting, maybe just letting things slide a little bit, like not paying attention to it too much. And then, of course, sometimes that's the right thing to do, and sometimes it isn't. But when you now look back, and I'm sure you did the right thing when you were kind of, letting the situation evolve and see how it developed, right? But if you had the possibility to go back in time and take action, what would have been the moment when you would have taken action? And given what you know now, what would you have done as a Scrum Master?
Yeah, good question. So what I probably would have done differently, and the moment where I would step in more concretely earlier on would be the moment where I've had several discussions with this team member, and I already saw interactions with the other team members were difficult. I did not really intervene, and I also didn't help to expose this problem in all seriousness that it was. So that's something I would have started doing with the knowledge that I have now. And what I learned in my years as Scrum Master is to actually overcome my conflict avoiding nature and actually approach conflict and use it in a constructive way, let's say, but also to sometimes to show that conflict is not something to avoid. So I'm now trying to show that to the team, but I have to sort of overcome my personal tendencies to avoid conflict now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point, that we need to be aware of our own perhaps resistance or hesitance in addressing conflict, and we need to be able to react to that. So learning how to go around it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with letting things evolve a little bit and see how the people, after having a couple of conversations, how the people themselves evolve, because sometimes people do adapt and they take different approaches when they are helped to do so. The other thing that you said that I think is incredibly important is that we as Scrum Masters don't necessarily need to address the conflict, but we need to make it visible to the team, right? We need to have conversations in, for example, retros or in smaller groups or, while walking outside, going to lunch or whatever. We need to be able to raise the topic and, for example, say, hey, I've noticed that there's this difficulty in, for example, getting to an agreement when there's a disagreement on feature design with this particular team member.
Yeah.
How should we solve it as a team?
Yeah, so that makes sense. So indeed, as I understand it, a big part of what a Scrum Master can do is indeed make things visible for the team, which means that I shouldn't be solving the problem for the team, but just let the team really bump into it. Right, and if you bump your nose into something, then it has everybody's attention. So sometimes a little bit of friction or conflict can be a good mechanism to make something visible for the team. But it also means that as a person, the Scrum Master needs to ensure that you create situations where differences of opinion can be voiced. And they might lead to a conflict, right? So you're actually seeking these situations.
Absolutely. One thing to add to that is that it might lead to a conflict. On the other hand, the earliest it leads to a conflict, the easier it will be to solve the conflict.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings me to my earlier example. Of course, when I fully realized what was going on with this difficult team member, by then one other team member already left. And this person also already left. So things can go fast, and if you don't observe closely, you might miss a few things.
Absolutely. That was a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Pieter.
Thank you.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.